Naofumi Iwatani is a normal boy, normal guy, just like all of us, or some of us, and he's just normal in general. Watches anime, reads manga with his parents, or basically lives with his parents, and so on. I mean, he goes to school / college, working here and there, but now he basically watches over his little sister for a bit of an allowance. But he wouldn't realize that one day his trip to the manga store would change his life forever. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what happens. He comes across a book that he normally would never read in a million years, but he would read it. He would begin reading this so-called book, and it would kind of talk about the rising of heroes. And it would talk about a sword, a spear, and also a bow. But here's the thing. He's confused. There's a weapon missing. And he reads further as actually words begin to appear. And when words begin to appear, it begins to say many, many things. Those words begin to say that this other hero, was a weapon in himself. Far different than anyone could possibly imagine. A gem would be placed on the internal part of his chest, and it seems as if he was partially made up of metal, but it didn't seem that way. The metal was adapted to a humanoid skin, and, well, it made him some sort of an android, but maybe a robot. They're not sure. Maybe a cyborg. And more begins to get explained, but as things kept getting explained, well, things begin to glow around Naofumi, and then he appeared in a brand new world. He's faced with 3 other people, and those 3 other people had a sword, had a spear, and had a bow, just like the book said. And quickly, they wouldn't know who they were, but quickly they would see many royal people running through the kind of where they are. It seems like they're in a glorified cage of some sorts. And they look over toward those people and they're completely confused, but quickly they're rushed up toward the king, and the king would begin speaking to all of them. The king would tell them all that they've been sent here to protect the kingdom of Melromark from something known as the waves. The waves are catastrophes that more or less surround this place and more or less kind of hurt everyone within not only Melromark, but almost everywhere. But that's not something that the heroes would even know. They would only know that Melromark is affected by these waves. And it's the start of the manipulation of what this kingdom truly has and truly has within. While Naofumi is standing here, though, he quickly realizes that this is very similar to a video game, because his eyesight, well, it's different than even the heroes. And he would even ask the heroes if they're seeing what he's seeing, but they would say no. That they gotta actually click the HUD menu and stuff like that to figure out what's going on. But Naofumi is different. Naofumi actually sees kind of calculations all throughout his eyes, sees observations, and even sees levels and strength and so on. Scanning the room, he can see that a lot of them are certain levels, and the levels vary massively. And he's actually just like intaking all of this data. It's as if his vision itself is giving him data on everybody, including the heroes. And soon they would realize and be told that they actually have to go out on their own. Well, of course they can build kind of a team, some travelers and so on, but at the end of the day, they would be going out on their own. And, well, let's just say Naofumi hears this, and for some reason deep down inside, he's not too terrified by this. And, well, good that he isn't, because when they start grouping up some of the best adventurers in Melromark, nobody wants to join Naofumi. They don't know who he is. They kind of say that he's, well, kind of an odd one out. The shield hero is supposed to be here, but then a remark is made saying that it's better that the shield hero is not anyways. But it seems like Naofumi is a faulty hero, maybe a hero that isn't supposed to necessarily be here, but at least he's better than the shield hero. And that remark is made a couple times throughout this time, but Naofumi doesn't take this to heart. Of course, he would decide that he's fine with going and finding adventurers on his own. Now, that might seem like an easy thing, but it's never an easy thing to find these adventurers on your own, especially in the place like Melromark. So when Naofumi decides to go out on his own, not only does he get this urge to wear a hat that he finds not too far outside of the Melromark castle, and it seems like this hat really wants him to say that he wants to grab this trucker hat. He's not 100% sure why, but maybe that's just some androidal instincts. I don't know if that's even a thing, but to Naofumi, it feels that way at least. With all that said, he travels outside of the kingdom and he begins to look for monsters to kill. He knows that he has this thing on his chest, but maybe he can try and kill some monsters. Maybe there's simple monsters to kill. And eventually he would come across some very, very small little balloon-like creatures. And when he would punch them, he would absolutely obliterate them. They would pop instantly, and Naofumi would absorb the kind of the little bits that are in this weird balloon-like monster. As he absorbs it, he feels that his strength would actually gain from this, and that's the only time his experience would actually go up. But his experience goes up quite a bit. He gets literally 0 experience when he punches things and kills things, but when he absorbs them, he gains experience, and it's actually quite a bit. But as he, throughout the day, continues to kill these little balloons, his experience would slowly but surely degrade just a little bit, just a tiny bit, and it would go down kind of incrementally in terms of how many times he kills and absorbs these small balloon animals. So he thinks that this is probably some defaulty system that forces him to kill monsters that are different, that are unique, and that add variety. And this would be fine with him because he's gained quite a bit of levels, and this would be a good time for him to stop anyways. He has a little bit of money, especially because the king more or less gave him it, and no one else decided to join him, so he'll be just fine in finding a place to go, staying there for a little bit, and kind of figuring out his whole situation. So that's exactly what he wants to do. He kind of sits down in a room and kind of learns about his leveling system. He kind of scans his chest and his vision as he looks through his own body, and he looks honestly in a weird path of leveling system. He sees that there are various versions of stats that he can upgrade, but also versions of stats that upgrade on their own as well. So he has an absorption stat that allows him to absorb more of a creature. So we're talking right now he can absorb 100%, but he can level it up so it can absorb 110%, 120%. And in what that means is that it actually gives more experience per monster he absorbs, and actually cuts down the incremental decline of experience when he absorbs those creatures. He upgrades that a little bit, especially because he's gotten like 7-8 levels already because of his more or less statistical kind of gain of experience way faster than any other heroes. And he kind of looks at these other stat categories as well, and even some of these like moves and special weapons he's allowed to use. He looks at them and it seems like there's a whole blurred out category, like a whole entirely different attribute category, and there's like 3 different versions, but it looks like they can be multiplied infinitely. There's one attribute section over here, one over here, one over there, one over here. They're everywhere, but there's no indicator of how to get them. And Naofumi wonders if maybe that has to do with party members. I mean, he has no party members, so that might be the only correlation he can really think of, which is fine. He doesn't really think too much about it, so he continues to kind of upgrade his own pathways, in which he upgrades some of his strength, some of his ability to absorb, like I said before, but those are so very minuscule in kind of upgrades because he already gets those upgrades per level, so they're not super big. Now, the main ones that he realized he should be upgrading, which it's a little too late because he only has a couple more points, is some of these little special moves. And those special moves include flight, include energy manipulation, more or less shooting ki blasts and stuff like that. Energy in itself, he can actually get to the point that he has infinite energy, so that he actually never has to sleep in a way, right? He never has to sleep to a certain extent. And also in battle, it seems like his energy will never deplete, which is interesting to him, because he finds it that those are two very different things, that his need to sleep may be null and void, but maybe there's still a stamina drain in terms of in battle consequences, because when you're battling at a high level, that could be definitely some interaction that would be bad. With all that said though, Naofumi would kind of take a rest, go to sleep, and the next morning he would wake up. But when he would wake up, he would see that almost half, if not 75% of his money is gone. And he would be confused, like, how did that even happen? And Naofumi would kind of put the money away, and he would walk out the door and no one was there. It seemed as if someone came in and stole his money. And Naofumi would try to report this to the king, but the king would act as if, more or less, like, there's no way that's the case. And Mine would even come in and say that she saw Naofumi splurging on a ton of stuff that for him to eat and spend all this money, and now he's just trying to get extra money out of her father. In which Naofumi hears this and is like weirded out by it, and he kind of waves them off, saying that it's not a big deal, that he'll just go make money himself, and 25% of what he has is a-okay with him. In which the king tries to say, whoa, just for being like disloyal, they're gonna take the rest of his money away. And Naofumi looks at him and shakes his head as he just leaves. He doesn't even try and, like, you know, say like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. He leaves with his money, and the king tries to have the guards stop him, but the guards go to hit him and try to stop him, and they can't even budge him. It seems like Naofumi's armor, or like his body, is pretty resistant, and that's something Naofumi didn't even know himself, so that's something good to think about. Naofumi would leave Melromark. His goal now, just leave and figure out whatever he needs to do ASAP. And he has a small ability to fly now, so he flies off. He decides that he's going to fly off, and he's going to look for a place that he can go, at least to a certain extent, and maybe he can find some good food, good people, and also maybe get some new people to add to his party. When he arrives at a brand new place, the village of Loot, he doesn't really find any of that, but he does donate a little bit of his money to the good people there, and they practically freak out because of how much money that really is and how much they can really get with that. And it's so good for them, and they say that he can stay as long as he wants. And he asks if they have any strong warriors, anybody that is capable in fighting, but they would say they really don't, and that's just unfortunate at this point. But they do bring up the fact that, well, there's this slave trader, and that they don't like the reason why there's not many good warriors anymore, and not many good people that are like fighters anymore, is because they're scared that the slave trader is going to take them and more or less take them away. And Naofumi hears this and he grows interested, and he thinks to himself that, you know what, he's going to go see what this is all about. He wants to see what this whole little slave trade thing is all about. And when he arrives and eventually would be guided in by a creepy man, the creepy man would explain how it works, what he has, and so on. And Naofumi would say that he wants these things released. Why does he have them? And of course, the creepy man, the slave trader, would say that this is all legal, that he's doing this and it's all legal under the Melromark rule. And this would make Naofumi kind of disgusted. Like, this is kind of disgusting, dude. And frankly, of course he would be. Naofumi, though, would say that he's going to pay for the freedom of a couple of these people, or a couple of these obviously slaves, and that's exactly what he does. He pays for a couple of very expensive creatures, and these creatures are like werewolf-like creatures, or like wolf-like creatures, and like these monsters kind of have a hard time obeying Naofumi initially when they're released out of the cage, But quickly, once Naofumi stops them from even hurting him, and once they bite on him and feel the crack of their own teeth, they immediately obey. And they don't even have a slave crest. And of course, the slave trader would say, oh yeah, you should do a slave crest, but Naofumi would shake his head. Naofumi would see on his own screen all of the analyzation of everything going on. He would see this little gem pop up on the chest of both of the animals he has in front of him. One, a black bear, and another, this wolf. He puts his hands on both of their chests, and they immediately are obedient. It seems like they're mindless creatures, and they're very calm though. And these gems kind of resemble this android-like gem on his own chest, and maybe this just turned them into kind of like cyborgs in a way. But he doesn't think too much about it. He's just following the role of what's in his brain and what was already there in his eyesight. The slave trader finds this to be insane, that it seems like they've gotten even stronger from that little thing he just did. And Naofumi looks at him and just rolls his eyes and says that he wants to take that little girl as well, the one that's sick and almost dying. And, well, of course, the slave trader says that's just fine, and Naofumi would buy her and do the same thing once again, and it seems like the little girl's sickness would just evaporate, would go away, and Naofumi would kind of tell her that everything's going to be okay. And of course the two animals would run over to her and be super nice. And Naofumi tells the slave trader to treat these animals better. He'll even flick him some extra money, and that he's going to tell him this one time. He may not be able to liberate all of them right now because legality, and that it's legal in Melromark, but he wants him to hear this very clearly. He's going to come back. He's going to buy all of them. He's going to release them, and he's going to bring them into a sanctuary very soon. And of course the slave trader would say, oh yes, the heroic hero. Yes, we understand, heroic hero. And Naofumi kind of holds and grits his teeth because he kind of wants to just kill him. But Naofumi, well, he hasn't gone through anything traumatic enough to warrant him just murdering him straight up. And Naofumi hasn't truly realized how bad this world is. But with all that said, he takes Raftalia and the two animals, and he brings them to actually Loot Village. And they are designated to protect Loot Village, at least for the time being. And he takes Raftalia actually to train because she's extremely weak. It seems like the animals and Raftalia have the same effects as Naofumi. It seems that they don't level up by just killing things, they actually have to absorb things as well. So he gets Raftalia a nice sword and also just some simple clothing and armor, and they begin training. Raftalia is kind of getting over her fears, and she would get over them relatively quickly because of the fact that she has this immense amount of power now. And throughout the time right before the wave, well, they would gain massive amounts of levels and would even go into a nearby mine to try to gain some money. But this nearby mine would lead to Raftalia conquering her fears entirely, killing this giant dog, double-headed dog monster, and Raftalia would absorb it and would gain strength so much so that she would grow into a young adult. Now, Fumi would be confused by this, but it would be explained to him that actually her kind, when they level up, they grow in age or grow into their prime, which is really good for battling, especially male versions of her species actually are perfectly set into battling like this, if they need to, of course, because if they're in a time of peace, then it literally doesn't even matter, and they could just progressively level up. With all that said, though, now Fumi goes back to Loot Village because he knows that they need to be prepared for this wave to come. He looks at the two animals that he has, being that the black bear and a wolf, and their levels seem to be pretty good. And he trains with them for the last day, but he could tell that they're very, very strong. And the fact is, if they weren't obedient to him, they might be able to hurt Naofumi quite a bit, at least to a certain extent. But since they were kind of wild and didn't understand what was going on, it's a little harder for them to actually hurt Naofumi. Because Naofumi's skin is so tough and so just durable that you have to defeat him in a different way. But Naofumi doesn't worry about that, at least not at this moment, and he gets ready for the wave. When he gets ready for the wave, he actually doesn't even go back to the Dragon Hourglass. He just knows that the wave is coming in at a certain time, and he learns from Loot Village that it's going to happen within the next 6 hours. So he tells them that he's going to actually wait, take a bit of a rest because he hasn't rested that much, and if anything happens, wake him up instantly. He'll get up and he'll defeat this wave. They're grateful for this, and they say they're going to prepare supplies while he rests, and that's exactly what happens. They prepare supplies, the wave begins, and Naofumi is awoken. When Naofumi wakes up though, oh my god. The zombies, the skeletons, the giant goblin-like creatures, the slaughter begins. Naofumi begins to absolutely pummel these creatures. Now, Raphtalia has her way with all of the skeletons and zombies, easily defeating them, and the black bear and also the wolf that Naofumi has begins to just devour, trample, and so on. And it's a absolute bloodfest. And Naofumi promises that they'll clean up Loot Village right after this, and it's pretty obvious who's going to win this fight. And Naofumi is curious at why it's taking so long for the wave to end. And he's eventually told that the main boss is kind of more or less what needs to be defeated for the whole wave to end. And Naofumi, hearing this, decides to fly over in the direction, and Raphtalia would soon follow, and she would be flying as well, being that she does have a stat leveling system very similar to Naofumi's, just nowhere near as strong and as potent, so her flying is a bit weaker. Think of it like when Gohan flies versus when Videl flies, right? It's nowhere near as good, but it's still enough to travel good distances pretty quickly. Naofumi would arrive to see that they're actually fighting a chimera, or a giant kind of manticore-like creature, and it seems like they're kind of toying with it, taking turns and so on, but eventually when he would get there, they would defeat the monster. The monster would be defeated, and the wave would subside, and that would be the first wave completed and over and done with. Naofumi, though, would kind of be wondering why they took so long. What was the point of kind of dragging it out? And they would say that they were just having their fun, like don't be so like grumpy and mad, and they would just leave the dead body of that chimera just laying there. Naofumi would watch as they walk away, and he would ask how are they going to clean it up, and they say that that's not their problem. Ren, Itsuki, and also Motoyasu would say that that's the problem for some commoners, and this would kind of annoy him, but he knew what he was asking, and he knew the answer would have been exactly what they said. So he walks over with Raphtalia and even actually summons the black bear and the wolf, being that their connection with him is more of a master to slave relationship, but it's more like master android to minor android relationship. With Raphtalia, she's not mindless, so the summoning, you can't really summon her. It's just not how that works in this regard. But they would arrive next to him, and they all three would absorb this chimera, and as they absorb it, Naofumi's levels would spike extremely high, but the others would obviously cap out. Their levels would stop around 25, 28, but Naofumi's would exert toward the 40s. And the reason for this is because of Naofumi's ability to absorb more and not have that linear decline in terms of experience. But still, their experience would incline like crazy, and they would be sitting around 28 to 30 or level 30. And this would be extremely powerful, especially with their way of utilizing their own abilities. This would be extremely, extremely powerful, and more powerful than the other heroes. But how would they know? Especially because they act as if Naofumi isn't even a hero at all. With it all said and done, Naofumi Iwatani is ready to head off on whatever is to come after the first wave. Nothing bad happened during this wave by any means. It actually was pretty much smooth sailing. But of course, Naofumi's idea of preparation leans on the people that he has around him. So he does believe that maybe it's probably for the best to continue and to make sure to continue dealing in, well, the best faith they possibly can. So he decides that he's going to travel a bit, do a bit of moving, because he feels that there's a lot to be seen from here on out, and he would be eventually correct. Naofumi would get a mild invitation to the kingdom, but it's actually because someone within the kingdom made a mistake. They forgot that they didn't want to send out these invitations to people that were quote-unquote not heroes, but Naofumi would obviously just ignore it. He wouldn't worry too much about what's going on in the Melremark Kingdom. He would worry more about what's going on here, what he needs to do now, in which this would be very, very simple. Naofumi would leave with his party, Raphtalia, the black bear, and also a wolf, two that he felt didn't need to be named and didn't need to be kind of tampered with in terms of their connection. They are loyal pets to him, and Raphtalia, on the other hand, is a living being, a true living being with a functional brain that can make its own decisions via free will. But Naofumi continued on his path, and eventually he would come across a group of bandits. These bandits would kind of threaten Naofumi, but Raphtalia would quickly cut through them like butter and immediately tie them up and leave them there stunned. They would be shocked. How is this even possible? How were they able to do this? But Naofumi says that they really shouldn't have done that. And they actually saved a traitor in doing so. And Naofumi tells the traitor that he owes him one. And the traitor says that he definitely does. Naofumi would steal a ton of stuff from these bandits, and it would be kind of like stealing from the other stealers or stealing from the other thieves. So, in a way, is Naofumi a thief? Kind of, but that's kind of beyond the point. Naofumi takes all of their loot and heads off once again, and the trader, once arriving at his location, would tell Naofumi that he'll give him a trading pass, and on top of that, he'll give him the ability to do much more. Naofumi says that, well, it was simple enough for them to travel, so traveling to different places and doing missions for him should be easy enough as well. Naofumi takes the trading pass as basically a reward and says that if he has any quests for him to do or missions to go on, he'll take payment as a reward as well. Of course, the trader thinks this is a great idea. He doesn't want to go out and get killed by some of these bandits, so he'll let Naofumi kind of gain some of this money and rewards as he goes out and handles the business that could be bad. So the first one that he tells Naofumi that he needs to go on is help a village. It seems like this village is overrun. Yes, overrun with a ton of these kind of monstrous plants. Now, these monstrous plants are no joke. They seem to be completely constricting the village entirely and constricting the place entirely, forcing them to not be able to move in and out, and resources are growing slim. Naofumi sees this as an opportunity to go help out, so he does just that. He heads off to help out with that village, and as he arrives at the village, he sees all of these monsters. Him, Raphtalia, and his two other companions mow down all of the plants they see. But of course, it's never going to be that simple. He brings herbicide, but even this herbicide will no way be enough in terms of power, so he begins to think that maybe he needs to channel his energy manipulation into the herbicide itself, and maybe it'll overpower whatever's here and exterminate all the plants. But that's the issue. He'll exterminate all the plants, and then they will have no food to grow, and there's a chance that the soil won't be fertile. Naofumi thinks this far ahead and decides that it's worth the risk for him to destroy the plants, so they fly over and go to the mother of all trees, a giant tree that is obviously the root of all of the evil, no pun intended. But Naofumi plants the herbicide, injects it through the tree and its roots, and energizes it entirely. It just cripples all of the plants instantly, and all the plants would fall dead. But Naofumi would actually realize that's exactly what he thought would happen. They all might die, but all of the soil is now tainted. So he flies around gathering other places soil and just kind of good stuff for the healthy ground, or to make the ground more healthy. And on top of that, even getting some food that is owed from Loot Village. Loot Village happily supplies food, especially with how much money Naofumi provided initially, and these couple of trips wouldn't take that long. He would arrive back to where he needs to get to, and he would deliver a crate full of food, and on top of that, he would also deliver much more. Like I said, the soil and stuff to fertilize the ground. And everyone is happy to see this. He apologizes for the desolate land, but they say that a lot of them have farming abilities, so they should be able to recover. It might take a little bit, but it should be a recovery period, and this food should get them through some time. Naofumi says that he'll come back and check on them every couple days to make sure that they're okay. They say that that's really not needed. Every couple days, there's not much that can happen within that time, but Naofumi insists. He says that he has quick travel, so it's not too big of a deal. Naofumi and his party would eventually leave, Raphtalia being happy of how much they helped that group of settlers and those group of villagers. That would lead them to the very next mission. Their very next mission would be one that actually surprised them immensely, and that would be, well, a sickness, a plague running over a village. This sickness, this plague, would definitely surprise Naofumi. He doesn't understand how this is even coming about and what's even going on, but I mean, it's something's going on, so he decides to kind of stay there and survey the area as he analyzes everything that's happening. And he realizes that this plague is all located at the top of that mountain, at the very, very top. He looks up and he can see that all of his sensors are flaring up there. And he tells Raphtalia and also his companions to come up with him. They fly or race up the mountain, and Naofumi would arrive to see a monstrous dragon. Now this dragon, yeah, it's a bit of an issue, because Naofumi sees that it's way too big just to evaporate. It might actually cause even worse of a plague, and it would take days, maybe even weeks to clear out entirely. So he can't just burn it all away instantly. It has to be kind of methodically and like more or less structurally taken apart. So he starts with the tail, cutting it off in half easily with kind of like this blade of ki. And as he does, it seems as if the dragon is a zombie dragon, and it begins to awaken. The dragon roars and begins to just scream toward Naofumi as if it's in pain. Naofumi quickly would burst into action, and so would Raphtalia with an energized sword as well, cutting toward the dragon. The two companions, the wolf and also the black bear, would dive toward the dragon, tackling it down. It seems like their strength is overwhelming the dragon entirely, and the few cuts and the few places that they cut the dragon, from legs to tail to now head, is now crucial enough to put the dragon down very quickly. And on top of that, they sense something within that dragon, and as Naofumi stabs into the dragon, pulling out this kind of gem, this crystal of some sort, he would take it and he would absorb it into his chest. As he does, it seems like he not only gets the ability to absorb the entirety of the dragon, being that he's now powerful enough to do so, but it seems like his strength has evolved even further, and even further than he would even believe. His strength has now evolved into a new form. It seems like it's a more muscular form, but it seems that the ability actually requires him and his two companions, the black bear and also the wolf. Combining them both into himself, it allows him to actually surge the power of the dragon with the combination of the two of his companions into a power that is ungodly. Now, he doesn't bring this up to them, but he would eventually. He would decide to do that later on, but for now, they clean up the rest of the dragon, which involves mostly cutting up and Naofumi absorbing it, gaining immense strength. But like I said, that strength does peter off to a certain extent, so some of the party members, Raphtalia and the two other companions, would gain that strength as well. After it is all said and done, and the people down below are good and cleared and healthy, Naofumi sees this as a good time to take a bit of a rest, take a bit of a vacation, not necessarily for long, but they all head to this hot spring out on a delivery mission, and they kind of relax, take a load off, and that's when he brings up this power that he's gained. And of course, the loyalty is undeniable for all three of them. Even Raphtalia says that she would do it if it means Naofumi would save this world. And Naofumi says that it only works with the two of his companions because they are animals, it seems, or at least beings that are undeniably, uncontrollably loyal. That they are so loyal to the point that if Naofumi told them to go basically jump off a cliff, they would do that. And of course, they are so loyal that they agree to this as well, and you can tell through their body language. But Naofumi says that there's no point in now because he doesn't know if it's reversible. Because if it's not reversible, then they would be down 2 party members, and it would become a bit of an issue. Naofumi sees this kind of as a relatable thing, at least at the moment. And with that said, he continues to upgrade not only himself through his stat system, but also the people that are in front of him. His stat system works so much differently than anyone else's. Of course, this is unbeknownst to him, but he increases the size of the black bear and the wolf, making them giant. Not giant to the point of they're like 20 feet tall, but big enough to actually ride. So if they don't want to travel via flight, they don't have to. And this would be good for interaction with different villages and so on. And he has the ability to shrink them a little smaller back to their normal forms if need be. During this travel though, back to Melromarc Kingdom just to get some more supplies and also move them back to Loot Village, because he wants to make sure that not only Loot Village but many other villages that he's worked with stay sustained. He starts heading off, and he would run into a girl that seems to be playing with the Filolials. The black bear and also the wolf would go play with her for a little bit, and Naofumi would learn that she's trying to get back to the Melromarc Kingdom as well, with no grievances really of anything. He's not like he's been that betrayed. I mean, he has to a certain extent, but not to the level that he would have in canon. He takes her, decides to take her there, and drops her off at the Melromarc Kingdom. Of course, a dispute would awaken pretty quickly while he's there with Raphtalia, and well, Motoyasu would say that this is unholy to have a slave on his team, but he would say that she is no slave. She has free will, and on top of that, she wears no slave crest. He actually freed her from the slaves, or slave trader. But with that said, he actually has a job to do in terms of freeing more of them. Of course, Motoyasu would disagree and would attack Naofumi, but the person to block would be Raphtalia. Far stronger, it seems, than Motoyasu, at least in just potent strength. Her energy blade, turning her sword into this blue beam of energy, would stop his own spear instantly, and she would be offhanding it. She wouldn't be in a strong holding stance, as if she knows that her strength is overwhelming compared to his. He's shocked. He is taken back, and frankly, his manhood is completely obliterated by this, and Raphtalia would kick him aside as she puts her blade away and says that Master Naofumi doesn't want to fight, and that she follows the wishes of him. She would float and begin flying away with him, as the other two would follow suit as well, running off, not being able to really use flight the way Naofumi and Raphtalia do, but still pretty fast in their own right. But as they fly away, the little girl would arrive once again, and she is, well, the heir apparent to the throne. She is actually the little sister of that one girl that betrayed Naofumi to a certain extent, the little sister of mine, and frankly, this is definitely off-putting. Mel is someone that is kind of in the favor of Naofumi, but Naofumi wouldn't listen too much to what she was saying, because he even told her that he has things to do. He has nothing against her, but he has things to do before the next wave, and only days separate from that time. He would leave, but Mel would make it clear that Naofumi is to not be messed with, and on top of that, he's to be treated like a hero, and that is the facts of it. And of course, many people would disagree with this, but she would say that these are orders straight from the queen. But they could always decide to dispute them and disagree. I mean, they just have to deal with the consequences later. With all that said, Naofumi would set off toward the slave market once again, and when he would arrive, he would begin buying more and more to kind of free them and bring them to Loot Village. The idea is to have them be not only superpowered and androided, and changed entirely to be loyal and also help out around the kingdom, it would be good to actually put them, a couple at Loot Village, couple at different other villages he's passed on by, and so on and so forth. Even during this time, he continues throughout these days helping more and more villages, even ones that had a famine. And he realizes that all 3 of these villages that he's helped actually have one thing in common. They were all messed up by the heroes. It was either Ren, Itsuki, or Motoyasu. They all messed up in some capacity. But that's not something he needs to deal with now. With days before the wave, there's very little time, but a lot to be done. But with that said, that's for the final part, or the next part, of What If Naofumi was the legendary android hero. We're right before the second wave, and the second wave is going to determine everything. The other heroes, well, we don't know what they've been up to. We only know that they've been doing bad things. From Motoyasu to Ren to Itsuki, all we know is that they've been messing up. But who's to say they actually done all wrong? Maybe they've done a couple things right. Naofumi doesn't know, and he doesn't, well, care to know, at least to the largest extent. And he decides that he's going to handle what needs to be handled from here on out. And that is the second wave. His power is absolutely off the charts, and that even includes his companions, who are about to be at a level where they can be upgraded or get their own class upgrades, and he's pretty excited to see what their level of power goes beyond just that. And as they approach the second wave, he prepares everyone. He prepares every single last person from all the villages he visited and from all the villages he's even been around. He prepares them all, and when the second wave begins, he begins to protect everyone and everything. And it's very easy. It's not a hard task for him, and as they fly around defeating monster after monster, they actually realize that this wave is taking a long time, like even longer than the one before, which would kind of frustrate him and bring him over to the other heroes. He begins to think that maybe they're taking so long because they're just lollygagging around, but it's actually because they're arguing about how to defeat the monster. Him and Raphtalia are just hovering above them as Raphtalia shines a bright light, seemingly revealing what the true monster's intentions are, and it's this giant ghost-like creature. And immediately Naofumi would go in for the kill and immediately rips it to shreds. Naofumi would watch as the remains of this monster would float on down, and quickly another one would appear as well. But a strike, an absolute beam, would cut the monster down entirely, and Naofumi would look over to see who this is, and he has no idea. Who the hell is it? He kind of flies over to her slowly and asks what she is doing here and what she wants, and if she's just here to help out. In which she says that's quite the opposite. She's here to kill them all. In which Naofumi shakes his head and says that was really the wrong answer. Raphtalia comes out of nowhere, landing a clean blow to her face, sending her flying downward as Naofumi would kick her back up to the sky. Glass is her name. She wears a kimono and wields two twin-bladed war fans. But she is getting absolutely pieced up at this moment. She's confused. What's going on? How are they so strong? What even occurred for them to get this strong? Naofumi flies up to her once again as he holds her in midair and asks her one more time if this is really what she wants. And Glass asks him how he got this strong, that this doesn't make sense. And Naofumi says that, well, he doesn't understand it either, but he can tell that she's from another world, so maybe their world is just not as strong as his. He looks back down at his people behind him, and then he looks back at her. Okay, maybe that's not true, but I'm stronger than your world, at least. In which she would look back at them and would think that maybe killing them maybe would get him to be in a position of, well, trying to stop her. She would immediately shoot beams toward her or toward them, and Naofumi wouldn't even move, just watching the beams hit them, and she would be in complete shock. Why didn't you save them? Why didn't you try to save them? In which Naofumi would shake his head. I haven't even been on good terms with them since I came here. and I'm far stronger than them. He immediately then slams her into the ground and begins to beat on Glass, obliterating her, destroying her. And Raphtalia comes in, helping her back up and basically pinning her to the wall, asking her what is the true meaning of this visit, in which she says, like she said, to kill them all. Naofumi would put up his hand, and a beam of light would then begin to more or less generate as he pointed at her face, saying that, well, if that's the only goal, she's not getting back alive. Not to her world, not to any world. Naofumi would blast her, but as he's blasting her, well, Raphtalia would move her out of the way. Naofumi would sigh as he turns and says that she's lucky that Raphtalia has free will, that she could choose to do stuff like this, and he'll give her one more chance to decide what she's going to do. Because in his eyes, he begins to tell her that they can figure out whatever they need to figure out, and it doesn't have to reach this climax. Naofumi would wait for an answer, and Glass would say that she agrees, that they won't siege anymore, that they agree that they won't try to kill them, and they won't try to do anything else. Glass makes a promise, and she says she'll hold to that word, but there's other things at hand, that her world is at stake, and every other world is at stake as well. Naofumi says that, well, it's time for her to take a rest. At least go take a rest, get healed up, because it seems like they have a lot to do and a lot of work to do. He then goes to walk away and tells her that if her other subordinates, whatever other heroes they have, decides to go against this little treaty, that he won't hesitate to kill all 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them. He doesn't care. Or even if it's just her, he won't hesitate. He walks away with Raphtalia as they begin floating toward the bodies of the other heroes, seeing that they are still alive. Naofumi would sigh as he basically shoots a tiny bit of energy, healing them up just a little bit. And it would shock them back to life, and he would drag them all to a place to get recovered. They would immediately ask where she is and what happened. Did he kill her? Are they dead? Are they in heaven? And in which Naofumi says that for one, none of them would go to heaven. Let's get that straight. But also, no, she's gone. She got away. In which Naofumi lies through his teeth about exactly how she got away. And in which they even try to remark that Naofumi should have went in for the kill. But Naofumi says that there was no kill. That it was an even match. In which they know this isn't true at all. But they did black out for a long period of time. So maybe she was hiding power. In which they would say that, oh, well, the only reason why they were hurt was because she cheap-shotted them. Naofumi says that they couldn't even react to the blast. He saw that blast in slow motion. They need to shut their mouths so they don't waste energy. He doesn't want to hear them talk anymore. He drags them off to the infirmary and allows them to get healed up, and honestly, all their teams to get healed up as well. And they try to, they're on their last legs, let's just say that, and they're trying to do a bit of a kip up. The king would reward Naofumi for bringing them alive, but would question a couple things about the waves and all the above. But Naofumi has such little information. He waves him off and tells him that he needs to do much more, and he has a lot to do. In which now, as Naofumi leaves, he would be approached by a woman. This woman would begin to tell him things that he didn't even understand and didn't realize until now. He learns that, well, the queen for one wants to speak with him, in which Naofumi tells Raphtalia that they need to go, and that the other 2 companions could stay around and protect these fools, because he doesn't trust that Glass won't show up and just try to finish the job. At least not 100%. He tells them, though, that if anything bad happens, they teleport away and then come and get him. Raphtalia and him would leave, and they would fly off toward where the queen is. When they would arrive, it's in a brand new country, a completely different one than Melromark itself, but that wouldn't be too much of a worry. Actually, some of the people there would be cheering, saying that they didn't realize they would be able to see the superhero Naofumi, in which it seems as if Naofumi's name began to spread as this flying hope and savior. Naofumi would wave them off, kind of with a bit of a smile, and Raphtalia would smile wide as she waves toward all of them. It seems as if they're all happy in a way that they're here. They would speak to the queen and learn of the church's betrayal or eventual betrayal, and would ask to get on top of it immediately. Naofumi would nod and say that he can handle that. He'll send Raphtalia back as soon as possible. In which, as he says this, though, well, some weird things are happening within the castle walls. And immediately one of the companions would appear. He asks the companion what's going on, and telepathically, or basically through that connection with Naofumi, he's able to tell him. And it seems like, well, Mine is trying to kill her little sister Mel. But it's odd. It's as if, well, Mel is already about to get poisoned, or some sort of weird way of trying to get her killed. Naofumi takes this information, but tells Raphtalia to go handle it now, and she flies off at fast speeds, from all the way from where they were, all the way back to Melremark. And Naofumi says that he'll go check on her right now, but they have some things to attend to. The queen asks what happened, but he feels that it's better that he doesn't say anything, saying that it's nothing big, it's just a personal thing. He flies off, trying to catch up toward Raphtalia, and when they would eventually arrive, they would see that Mel is on the ground, poisoned and seizing. Everyone's trying to help her, which Mine is kind of just leading them in the wrong directions. And Naofumi would eventually shoot a blast of ki, and as he does, he immediately would have vaporized the kind of toxins that were within her body, and she would wake up. Naofumi would pick Mel up and ask if she's okay, and she would say, yeah, she is, but how did he do that? He says that it's kind of like magic, sort of. It's a lot of explanation that he doesn't want to talk about. He then points at Mine and says that he has proof that she tried to poison her little sister, in which Mine says that this is ridiculous, but he would show a bit of a holographic image through his own eyes based on one of his companions, and it actually shows Mine doing just this, and then the companion leaving to actually tell Naofumi what occurred. And this would immediately have everyone turn on Mine, and on top of that, the king would be forced into a position where, well, he had to stay face and put her in prison, and put her behind bars, at least for now. Naofumi tells them to be safe because he has some other things to attend to now, in which the other heroes who aren't fully recovered but are partially ask what he's going to do, in which Naofumi doesn't say another word as he flies off with his companions and Raphtalia. He would then eventually arrive at, well, a group gathering of the Church of the Three Heroes, and as he sees all of them, he sees a ton of people there, and it seems as if, well, they were right, or the queen was right about this betrayal, and Naofumi immediately would just knock out all of these followers that are standing there. And Raphtalia asks how he did that, but he says that it's just a light ki blast. It's just like how he can revive. If they're weak enough, he can knock them out relatively easily. Now it seems like all the power that weapon is going to store just doesn't exist anymore. He would fly toward the Pope, knocking him out as well, and he tells Raphtalia and everyone else that is there, or his companions, to help him gather them all up, and that they need a full-fledged army coming over here to arrest every last person. In which they do just that. Naofumi gets a whole army ready to go, and basically during this imprisonment, everyone's kind of confused, and even the king is too, saying that, oh no, this is wrong. But quickly he would say that this is direct orders from the queen. The queen has told him to do this, and that the queen has priority over every last person there. Naofumi would kind of walk away, and the king would say, no, that's ridiculous. There's no way that the queen would say those things. But Naofumi tells him to shut up, and tells him that if he wants to deal with the repercussions of letting them free, he can deal with them on his own, but he might want to speak with his wife first. In which Naofumi would leave, and he would begin his whole roundabout, cleaning up the entirety of Melremark and even the outskirts of it. That's what he wanted to do from here on out, and that's what he wants to do entirely. Naofumi flies around and with Rautalia and also his companions, cleaning up Melromark and cleaning up every last thing he possibly can. Naofumi kind of does some amazing things. He cleans up some of the most foul people, and he even cleans up some of the slave trading that he knows of, actually holding former Raftalia's friends, and obviously they are still friends, but saving them as well, and stopping any further just tyranny that would be super unlawful and unmoral or immoral. And he does some pretty good stuff. After everything is kind of calmed down quite a bit, at least after the large wave of stuff happening, no pun intended with the whole wave thing, Naofumi would kind of have a bit of a communion with the queen. He would speak with her for a little bit. They would talk about stuff that is to come, what's going to happen, and so on and so forth. He actually learns of a XP event as well, a bit of a training event for all of them. And Naofumi thinks this is great, and he would love to get his class upgrades as well for his team. And she says that that is no problem at all. That could definitely happen as soon as possible. Naofumi says that he has some things to handle before he does anything else, but she says that that's no problem. They have about a week before they set off and set sails to the archipelago. And, well, Naofumi wishes her good luck and tells her to be careful, and that if she needs anything, to signal him immediately. Naofumi would then leave, and let's just say, out of nowhere, some odd things would occur. And it's not odd in the form of, anything more odd than what's going on now, because, well, we're living in a gaming world. But Naofumi would be kind of hearing these weird whispers, as if through the trees could hear something whispering and reaching out. And as he approaches, the whole scenery would change. Everything. It would turn into this floral pink, folios everywhere, and a woman would come hovering down, and this was Vittoria, the Fololio Queen. He would introduce himself, but she would say she knows who he is, that he's done amazing work. But there's a request, in which he's confused. He doesn't even know who this is, but let's hear it. She would say that she wants him to reconcile with the other heroes. Naofumi kind of says, yeah, he's not so sure if that one's gonna go very well. And, well, he's just blunt about it. Come on. They haven't been on the best notes. And if she's been watching for as long as, she says, she knows that this would just not go that well at all. In which she asks, please, just try. And Naofumi says, of course he would. He's going to try, but he promises that if there's worry of them dying, that he's powerful enough to handle everything. In which Vittoria questions if this is true. Come on, there's no way that he could take on all the waves on his own, but Naofumi says that he can. He knows deep down inside he has the power. He has the strength. He has the capabilities. He says that he's different from every other hero that she's ever seen. And Vittoria would say that she still wants him to try. And he nods his head and says he hopes to see her very soon. That this area, it's very peaceful. It's nice. Must be nice sleeping around here and relaxing. Naofumi would then fly off with Raphtalia, and they would continue on with their adventures to handle anything going on with helping other people, but eventually leading them to the Queen and heading over to the Archipelago event. The Archipelago event would go without a hitch. They would level up and quite a bit, especially after getting their class upgrades, and Raphtalia would be gaining strength at an immense rate. So would Naofumi, though. Naofumi would be extremely powerful, and he still hasn't absorbed the two other companions, and he hopes that he doesn't have to, at least not for a while. Naofumi finishes up his leveling, and during a day break, they kind of relax, and it seems like the black bear and the wolf actually swim deep into the water and then would come back out and would be in a bit of a panic. Naofumi would be confused, But then, using his own vision, he would see something. How did he not realize this before? He sees a dragon hourglass located underneath the water. And that would confuse him immensely. He would go diving in with Raphtalia and all of them, and being that they're androids, they could pretty much hold their breath or breathe underwater for long periods of time. So they head underneath, and they kind of just see what's going on. They see more or less the dragon hourglass and more things that are kind of confusing them. Because at the end of the day, why is there a dragon hourglass here? And why? Well, is it ticking and ticking to the beginning of a next wave? And that wave is very soon. This would kind of freak him out a little bit. Like, he's not afraid of a wave, but how? How did this even happen? What's even going on? And Naofumi would kind of relay this to the queen and many others about this wave. But the wave just happened. How is there another one? And the queen says that there's something for them to think about later, as that she gets and sets up a ton of fleets. And it's not a bad idea. Setting up a ton of fleets is probably for the best. They get set up with ships, boats, and they get ready to take on whatever that's going to arrive out of this water. They all board ships. Naofumi, Raphtalia begin to float above them, and they wait the arrival. But as they look to the right, they see two people, and Naofumi's scanner begins to go wild right on these other adventurers, and he realizes that those adventurers are not from this world. He floats over toward them and asks them, is this the showdown that they want? He wants to know. They don't have to surprise attack him. He can read them like a book. Naofumi would see shock in their faces, and Naofumi would float above them and still kind of hover as they go, as he kind of shifts down to their level, right in front of them, and asks them one more time, is this war that they're going to start, or are they going to help destroy this wave? Naofumi watches as the wave would begin, and he would begin dashing toward monster after monster, destroying them. But as he looks back, it seems like the two there, by the name of Lark and Therese, begin to actually help, destroying monster after monster. And even this giant fish would be killed by Lark, Therese, and Glass. They would stand on it, and Naofumi would have a standoff with them, asking if they're going to keep this peaceful, or are they going to go to war? Naofumi would wait, and eventually a hand would be stuck out by Glass. Naofumi would shake her hand, and this war seems to have subsided. They would explain to him what's occurring and what happened with the worlds, and Naofumi says that when it comes to it, he will give his assistance, and they will solve whatever problem that needs to be solved so they can all live. Naofumi says that they have business to attend to, and the sky begins to change slowly but surely into that vintage sky that normally is. The blue, the green, the beautiful colors, it changes from the murky purple that made people fear so much. Naofumi would leave, and he would leave with everyone else, and as a reward for all he's done, the queen would gift him something priceless. The deed to the land that Raphtalia grew up on. The deed that would change lives forever. Demi-humans would no longer be enslaved. Naofumi would help everyone he possibly could. But what would happen in the next? What would happen in the near future? Well, this world changes on a whim. This world changes just like the sky does every single day. The clouds move, and so does the enemies, and so do these villains. Sometimes the villains are even closer than you think. But with that said, the story of What If Naofumi was the legendary android hero would end here, and end here for now. If you enjoyed, make sure to show some love. Leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below. All that good stuff. I hope y'all enjoyed What If Naofumi was the legendary android hero, and I hope all y'all Have an amazing day. Later.